Let me introduce our panelists. Directly beside me is Blair Lundy. He's the distribution manager with Companies Coming. And beside him is Doug Golosky, the president of the Golosky Group of Companies. And to my farthest left is Dan McClellan, the International Labour Resource Manager for Banchel Constructors and the former president of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees. Would you please join me in welcoming all the panelists? We'll start with Blair with his opening comments.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to be with you this morning, and thank you for the kind invitation to share with you today our story of being big winners. I'd like to start with a little story now that has always brought my feet to the ground and allowed me to focus on the job ahead. And it goes like this. Just up the road from my home is a field with 2 horses in it. From a distance, each looks like every other horse. But if you stop your car or are walking by, you will notice something quite amazing. Looking into the eyes of one horse will disclose that he is blind. His owner has chosen not to have him put down, but has made a good home for him. This alone is amazing. If nearby and listening, you will hear the sound of a bell. Looking around for the source of the sound, you will see it comes from the smaller horse in the field. Attached to her halter is a small bell. It lets her blind friend know where she is so he can follow her. And as you stand and watch these 2 friends, you'll see how she is always checking on him, and that he will listen for her bell and then slowly walk to where she is, trusting that she will not lead him astray. When she returns to the shelter of the barn each evening, she stops occasionally and looks back, making sure that her friend isn't too far behind to hear her bell. Like the owners of these 2 horses, God does not throw us away just because we are not perfect or because we have problems or challenges. He watches over us and even brings others into our lives to help us when we are in need. Sometimes we are the blind horse, being guided by the little ringing bell of those God places in our lives. Other times, we are the guide horse, helping others see. Good friends are like this. You don't always see them, but you know they are always there. Please listen for my bell, and I'll listen for yours. Be kinder than necessary, for everyone you meet is fighting some kind of battle. Well, Companies Coming is fortunate to employ and work with a number of exceptional people who have disabilities. We currently have 30 employees having different types and degrees of disabilities with us. They all have one thing in common. They are all hardworking, caring human beings, just like all of us here today. Let me digress for a minute on how all this started. I was asked as a favor 8 years ago to hire a deaf man with cerebral palsy for the summer, and if it did not work out, I could lay him off in September. Well, 8, almost 9 years ago, I'll call him Bob, is still with me as a trusted, loyal employee, and best of all, my friend. Working with Bob allowed our employees the opportunity to learn that he and his disabilities were more like themselves than not. Bob was followed closely by an autistic young man, and then 2 more, one with deafness as a disability, and the other with brain injury. And there we sat for almost 6 years. 2 key things happened in that period of time. The first, our staff throughout the company came to know and understand our disabled employees. The biggest misunderstanding or barrier, which I believe is fear, disappeared as people soon learned about their values as human beings, saw their abilities, which, by the way, quickly overshadowed their disabilities, and accepted them as equals. Second, many of us became friends with our disabled employees. In my case, Bob and his wife, who was also deaf, became my friends, and throughout this friendship I began to assist them with many areas of their lives, such as banking, dealing with utilities, and various other areas of life, where I could help with matters that many of us take for granted. Let me step back for a minute and give you a bit of background on what followed. We had always done our work packaging and display assembly using 35 to 40 students. We worked Tuesday and Thursday evenings and all day Saturday, and then full-time through the summer. And over time, it simply wasn't enough. As the business continued to grow, we were falling behind, and so a solution was necessary and began to preoccupy most of my thinking. It was at this point, just over 3 years ago, that we began a new chapter in our story at Companies Coming. It all began, as you might guess, with my friend Bob. He and his wife had a tiny, older home in a not-so-good area of Edmonton, which created both a time-consuming and expensive trip to work every day. I helped Bob and his wife sell that home and buy a new one that was only 10 minutes to work. As moving day approached, I rented a truck. I took the day off and checked with Bob to make sure he had some other friends lined up. And I turned up about 8 o'clock on what turned out to be an absolutely freezing cold December morning, ready to go. Parked out front and went in. So there I was, Blair and 8 deaf folks, all with one goal: help a friend. Well, talk about the shoe being on the other foot. I quickly realized how isolated having a difference from those around you could be. Through the day, we worked together, we laughed, and communicated. Yes, we communicated by writing notes, pointing, and more. We had a great day and accomplished our goal by working as a team of equals. I learned from these folks just how difficult it was to find, get, and keep jobs. We were working away together, lifting, sliding, and packing, and through this, I had what was to become many aha moments in working with people with disabilities. In this case, the solution to my challenge of packaging assembly that I had been stressing about was right there in front of me. 2 facts came to mind. 1, I knew that people with disabilities had challenges finding jobs, so it seemed to me that there might be a ready workforce out there. 2, heck, I already had some outstanding employees who had disabilities. So on that cold December day, standing up in that truck, I connected the first dots in our current journey. We have used 2 constants to help guide us. First is our mission statement, which says, we promote a spirit of cooperation and trust among our coworkers and suppliers in service of our customers, our community, and our company, as well as one of our core values, which is, we succeed by working enthusiastically as a team while respecting the unique contribution of every individual. We had some ground rules that we already knew worked. First was that every person hired must be able to accomplish 2 distinct job functions. We knew that all of us, and therefore these folks as well, must be able to accomplish goals and feel successful in their work. 2, we committed to making it work. And tied closely to this, number 3, we had to be prepared to give a little, knowing that the benefits would be great. Working full and part-time hours to accommodate people, as well as personal appointments, are examples of this. The first step, and luckily for me, was to contact an agency to help us achieve our goal. We have several agencies in Edmonton, and such as on-site placement and employabilities, and others who truly make the difference in how successful you can be in hiring people with disabilities. They will pre-screen and bring candidates to you that are suitable to the jobs that you have vacant. We began by hiring several more deaf people, and it was about this time that we connected more of those dots in our journey. Our agency, On-Site Placement, suggested that they had clients with other types of disabilities that would work just as well. And so, we opened our placement to many other types of disabilities. We currently, as I mentioned, have 30 terrific employees, each having unique differences, just like you and I, working with us. Some are deaf, or sight impaired, or autistic, or have brain injury, or are developmentally disabled, or diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and many others. But the one thing that they all have in common is a desire to work hard and live the kind of life that you and I sometimes take for granted. They all have huge abilities that simply need to be focused on so that they may join us side by side in our work. This takes us to another of those dot connecting times that we now accept as part of our everyday learning process. While we expanded our workforce to include other disabilities, we still had the group working only on packaging assembly. Well, one day we were challenged in our order processing area, and I remembered that one of the young ladies working with us loved working with and was quite good working with computers. Well, I bet you're already guessing. That was the last day that she ever worked on packaging and assembly. Not only that, but we now have broadened our horizons so that we all work together, side by side, both disabled and not, achieving goals together, laughing, enjoying each other's company, and hearing from each other. We've made the transition to packaging assembly being done 5 days a week with amazing results. The production numbers are better than ever, and we are all benefiting from the value that our new employees bring to the company. If you were to ask any employee in our company in any department their thoughts on our journey, they would tell you that they are much better off for our decision, both as a company and as human beings. We have now accepted and look forward to our continued journey. Each time we had connected the dots in the past, we mistakenly thought that we now understood that path, but far from it. We now accept new opportunities with excitement, like the day I was asked to entertain the employment of a completely blind man. My initial thought was that we finally met the end of our journey, and his disabilities seemed too extreme to allow him to join us. But, again, how wrong I was. Because I love a challenge, I agreed to a trial period, and he began his employment with us. At the end of the first day, he was folding and assembling our most difficult display. 3 days later, I walked into the warehouse and spotted him over on the far side, working at a shrink wrap machine with amazing speed and accuracy. Truly a surprise. 3 days later, I walked into the warehouse again and spotted him working on a new machine, doing just as well. Well, a phone call was made, and now some 3 months later, he is doing outstanding work and bringing an absolutely fantastic attitude to all of us. One of our receivers has one arm, but does the same work as anyone else. A young man suffering from deafness and needing a walker to move is helping a young lady who has cerebral palsy and is in a power wheelchair. We now try more than ever to accept the fact that no disability will prevent us from attempting to find meaningful jobs for each and every one. Was this all easy? No. Do we have challenges? You bet. The benefits far outpace the challenges. Does everything work? Well, not quite everything, but we try again. Remember, we are committed to making this work. You've heard a couple of these before, but I want to repeat them. First, we focus on abilities, not on disabilities. Second, every employee would have to be able to successfully do 2 job functions. 3, every job would be meaningful and goals would be achievable. 4th, wages would be the same for all starting employees. We then set out to ensure that our new employees would receive the same compassion and understanding that we already gave each other. Doctor and personal appointments are necessary no matter who you are, so there would be no exceptions, ensuring that the same courtesy was extended to all employees. We are not alone either. We receive unbelievable support and backup from our agencies. When we need some advice or help, without a doubt, they're always there for us. Every single day reminds us of our commitment to these employees, but no different than that which we have to everybody else working with us. At this time, our 30 employees with disabilities, 11 have been advanced to full-time salaried status, while the rest are working regular, permanent, full, and part-time hours. Our line foreman has advanced from being hired 3 years ago, and I'm proud to say is doing a fantastic job. He's supervising 15 other employees. Our senior receiver supervising 5 employees is a young deaf man who is truly remarkable. We are carefully moving folks into areas where excelling and accomplishments are realized. Natural teams are forming and people are watching out for each other, with mentoring between themselves an everyday occurrence. Laughter and communication are present pretty much all day, and you can only imagine what a fun place our lunchroom has become. We have had radical changes occur in the folks working with us. Those who came to us with exceptionally quiet, almost withdrawn, are now part of all that happens. Those who had trouble accepting responsibility or working undirected are now offering ideas and encouragement to others. We have monthly staff meetings where we are always bringing in an interpreter to help with the communicating. When we have our monthly staff meetings with our full team, let me share with you that the conversations are lively, extended, and extremely positive. The bottom line is that we achieved an incredibly stable, hard-working, and dedicated workforce by fully integrating disabled people with all other employees. Since making the change, our efficiency and productivity numbers are both up. You may ask yourself, well, how can that be? Well, it's simply because we have employees who truly appreciate their jobs as well as enjoy them. Our employees come to work with smiles on their faces, work hard all day, and go home feeling that they have succeeded in accomplishing their goals. So bottom line, from a purely perspective of business, did we make the right decision? Without a doubt, absolutely yes. Our lives in general are improved by the new level of compassion and understanding that our new employees have brought us. We are a better company for it. We feel blessed that we're able to work together in a great environment, contributing to each other and to our company. I want to end with another short story, and it goes like this. There was once a blind girl who hated herself for no other reason than the fact that she was blind. She hated everyone except her loving boyfriend. One day, someone donated a pair of eyes to her, and then she could see everything, including her boyfriend. Her boyfriend asked her, "Now that you can see the world, will you marry me?" The girl was shocked when she saw that her boyfriend was blind. Not wanting to be burdened by a blind person, she refused to marry him. Her loving, devoted, and understanding boyfriend walked away in tears, his heart obviously broken. The girl who had been so fortunate to have the world opened up to her continued enjoying it day in and day out, trying never to miss a single pleasure that life had to offer. A while later, she received a letter from her ex-boyfriend, which stated simply, "I sincerely hope you enjoy your life. Your happiness was all that ever mattered to me. I am so happy that you are enjoying life, as I always hoped you could. I would like to ask one parting favor of you. Just take care of my eyes." This, sad as it may seem, is how the human brain changes when our status changes. Only a few remember what life was like before, and who's always been there, even in the most painful situations. Life is a gift. Today, before you think of saying an unkind word, think of someone who can't speak. Before you complain about the taste of your food, think of someone who has nothing to eat. Before you complain about your husband or wife, think about someone who's crying out to God for a companion. Today, before you complain about life, think of someone who went too early to heaven. Before you complain about your children, think of someone who desires children, but they are barren. Before you argue about your dirty house, or that someone didn't clean or sweep, think of people who are living in the streets. Before whining about the distance you drive, think of someone who walks that same distance. And when you are tired and complain about the job, think of the unemployed, the disabled, and those who wish they had your job. But before you think of pointing the finger or condemning another, remember that not one of us are without sin, and we all answer to one Maker. And when depressing thoughts seem to get you down, put a smile on your face. Thank God you're alive and that you're still around. Life is a gift. Live it, enjoy it, celebrate it, and fulfill it. So again, thank you so much for giving me this time with you, and I appreciate you letting me share the story of Companies Coming. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Doug Golosky, and I guess I'm the director, president, whatever you want to call it. Whatever I need to be in our companies, I will be, for the Golosky Energy Service Group. We have operations located in Fort McMurray, where we started, Edmonton, Montreal, and in various towns and municipalities throughout Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. Our list of services run the gamut from welding, fabrication, trucking, overlay for the mining industry, machine and pipeline services, conventional oil and gas companies, construction, maintenance. We also do provide professional services such as engineering, contract operators, procurement, quality assurance. Various Golosky companies were formed by myself and my wife and my brothers in the late 1980s. Being born and raised in Fort McMurray and having seen our companies grow from a single welding truck and a vacuum truck to companies that are globally pushing $500 million in sales annually, I can very well relate to how diversity. I think that we really need to understand what diversity means. One definition from the Society of Human Resource Management is provided. A broad definition of a diversity ranges from personality and work styles to all of the visible dimensions such as race, age, and gender, to secondary influences such as religion, socioeconomics, and education, to work diversities such as management and union, functional level and classification, or proximity distance to headquarters. I think I can summarize it even simpler. I just said everyone, everywhere, all the time. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different background. Everyone needs to work to provide for their livelihood. Therefore, welcome to Gloucester Energy Service. When hasn't our workforce been diverse in the last 20 years? Over the past 20 years, we have had over 200 tradesmen go from first-year apprenticeships right through to journeyman status. All the while in our employment, unfortunately, those days of seeing a worker through their career growth are virtually over. Attrition, turnover, and the transient workforce have become our working norm, and we are struggling, as is the rest of industry, for qualified, skilled people to fill numerous roles. We are competing not only locally with each other in our respective industries, but globally as well. Roles that we are recruiting for entail field-based tradespeople, administration, accountant, technical, and management professionals. We are proud and fortunate to say that our management team at one of our companies, my founding company, Clearwater Welding and Fabricating in Fort McMurray, has on average, between the 10 managers I have, experience of 12 plus years with us, which is pretty good, really good, I think. This is currently critical to the business. It is also critical that we seek out, mentor, and groom future managers and supervisors to fill the roles as they become open. This is the only way to survive in the global market. Obviously, we look at our recruitment practices and human resource policies to aid in our retention and growth of our workforce. The reality is that we are all after the same worker, the ones that are safety conscious, efficient at their jobs, and who take pride in their accomplishments. Despite various attraction and retention programs that focus on Aboriginal population, isolated communities, women in non-traditional roles, and foreign workers, we still have found ourselves in a major, significant labor shortage. We are not alone in this situation. Clearly, we must renew and focus our efforts. So the payoff for a diversity-driven workforce is simple. You have good workers, and your corporation is rewarded with profitability and shareholder return. It is therefore imperative that business have expectations for long-term results, not short-term. Rather than a quick fix, the business case for diversity is a long-term investment and offers sustainable in a competitive marketplace. The workers that range from young Aboriginal females looking to be welders, pipe fitters, other construction trades, to recent immigrants to Canada that possess some wonderful skills and qualification can, and most likely, will become industry leaders in the future. Hopefully your organization has recognized this, has fostered the appropriate culture from the top down, and is prepared to have these workers lead your company. If this is not done, these same workers will ultimately become leaders for the competition. I would suggest, in the strongest of terms, that this is not a good situation to find yourself in. So the obvious question becomes, what can we still do? Do the solutions of yesterday still apply to the problems of today? Clearly, No one agency or organization possesses all of the answers. In spite of this, we must continue to make inroads and to measure our performance from our diversity initiatives. It is also crucial that the merit-driven principle be the guiding factor in all of our actions, discussions, and employment advancement choices. Currently, our HR department is focused on 4 main objectives. 1, gender diversity. Continually increase the percentage of women we recruit, ensure proper career development for high-performing workers, and increase our organizational flexibility to accommodate a wider range of personal situations. 2, nationality diversity. Attract and develop non-Western nationalities or nationalities from emerging countries. Integrate these workers into all levels of the workforce, including senior management. 3rd, family and work-life mobility initiatives that work. Our people are truly our main assets. Without people, we have nothing. The change in the composition of our workforce necessitates an adjustment in our attitude toward recruitment, retention, and mobility of our employees. 4th, dual career relationships. One of the most significant changes in our society in the last several decades has been the entry and continuing presence of women in the working population. Families in which both spouses work have been significantly increasing, and now this creates new challenge for the organization. While encouraging fair employment practices and equal opportunities to all of our employees, we also need to take family consideration into account in any decisions about personal matters or assignments. Now, I'm reminded of a research paper from 2005, authorized by Nancy Lockwood, a content expert from the Society of Human Resource Management. In this paper, Mrs. Lockwood writes, "There is no best way to manage diversity. The identification, selection, and purposes of diversity initiatives and their development and implication differ from company to company. The likelihood of success is dependent on business needs and workforce issues, as well as situational factors, such as organizational culture and workplace environment. Ultimately, the strength of commitment by the CEO, senior management, and HR leadership will determine whether the organization successfully leverages diversity for competitive advantage." In closing, I would suggest that Ms. Lockwood hit the nail on the head with her comments. We must continually strive to achieve our objectives. We must measure our performance with respect to these objectives. We must be flexible in our approach and be prepared to readily adapt to emergent issues and trends. Above all, we must be vigilant to readily identify processes and practices that don't work, and to either modify or abandon those fallen processes in order to achieve the success we desire. So in closing, that's what I have to say, and so I would like to thank the Alberta Congress Board for the hosting of this much needed and timely conference and for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I'm Dan McLennan. Those guys kind of summed it all up, so that's it for my presentation. People who know me. Anyways, and I gave it lots of thoughts in the Congress Board, which I'm deeply involved with, phoned me and talked about audio-visual needs, so this is it for me. I don't, and I had all kinds of things written down, but what I've done is just write a few points on my experience with diversity. And right now, I'm in the role of recruiting workers from outside Canada for my company, which is Bantrell Constructors, which is, and until I left the public sector, I had, you think you know a lot, but you don't in the other areas, and that's why I think functions like this are good. Our company deals solely with building trades unions, so anything we do we do the hiring through those unions. So it's a different process than many of us are used to with employer relationships in the government or health regions or colleges, but it's certainly a learning experience. And just on diversity, I was a corrections officer for 17 years and worked with the government another 9 years and president of a union for 9 years. And some of the things I saw, I like to focus on things that work. And there were different times where we would do hiring initiatives. The provincial government would announce them, and they would sound good when they were announced, particularly in the area I was in. And there were some successful examples. And I look at, I was working in Calgary, and we did some native hiring initiatives, and we were able to involve people from those communities at that level and listen to the successful people who are working within the system and recruit other people. And that's such an important thing to do because you have to change the faces they're looking at as the faces within our province change. And I'm just thinking of when I was in a small local elected group where I worked, we had on the executive, we had somebody who was involved in his Métis organization. We had a fellow who was from, I believe, Treaty 8, who's now the leader of that local, and we had different representation, but you had to go an extra mile to involve them. I know when I was listening to the speaker last night, I was trying to think if I could get away with some of the funny stories without sounding like you were stereotyping people or being negative. One of the things that happened this year, we've brought in my job, we've had people come in, a large number actually from the States and from the Philippines, and certainly in my old job at the union, we had about 3,000 or 4,000 Filipinos who the biggest group joined in the last 5 or 6 years. So I had, I don't want to say a bias, but a great deal of experience going to Philippine events, and we would go as an organization to Philippine Independence Day and advertise and try and bring those people into the organization. But and you would try and learn lessons along the way, but this year one of the most amusing things for me was my cell phone rang, and it was 7 at night, and it was one of the tradespeople who was from the Philippines, and Dan, I'll never forget it, Dan, this is daylight savings time. I said, yeah, daylight savings time is daylight savings time. That's not a joke, because they'd never experienced it before, and so 25 Filipinos missed the bus. So they, but you know, you never thought of that. I never thought of that. So little things like that are very unique and are unique experience that you have to learn from. Some of the things I want to point out, I thought it would be a lot worse than it was. So we had about maybe 50 people from the Philippines, many who have returned now. And, you know, I think maybe the Congress board should talk about, not an emergency session, but you got people like Bob Blakely here and other people. I'm seeing on my desk that the need for workers from outside Canada is drying up quickly. So I'll either have a job title change next week or be back at my jail, I think. But it's changing quickly. We see, you know, welders, and I don't want to get into specific trades, but anyways, they're back in the Philippines, and the good thing is many of the unions post the jobs on the internet, so they can check the internet and see that the opportunities aren't there for them to come back, because when they are, they'll be back. But I think we're seeing major changes that I've just seen in the last month, and some people are saying good, a leveling off, long overdue, and you know, maybe it is, but certainly it's something that I'm seeing happen on my desk, and I've never been through it in construction before, and I think it's something that's so timely that's come up in the last 4 weeks, and maybe there's a way we should address it here. I just got some notes, other areas where I've seen diversity addressed effectively, and you know, you move into racism. I remember one time, and I don't work for the government, so I think I can say it, we'd had some very bad incidents of white supremacists who'd done some really pretty violent crimes in Edmonton, and they were housed in a correctional facility in Calgary. And it was really nice because there had been some recent hirings of some Calgary Stampeders who were wide receivers and defensive tackles. So these guys quickly, if they were racist, they hit it very quickly when they had to realize that these guys, they were dealing with people who were culturally different than them, but also very intimidating. and I found occasionally that worked. But one of the pleasantest of all surprises that I found in construction is in talking with the people from the Philippines and the people from the States, to a person, they haven't experienced any racism on the job. And people say, well, they're not going to tell you if they do. Well, they're going to tell somebody, because there's about 30,000 Filipinos in the Edmonton area. One of the things we do is make sure they know where their churches are, where community organizations are, where the consulate is. We're very fortunate. There's elected officials now of a Philippine background. They're going to talk to them. Part of the process that we've gone through, I have somebody who works with me who speaks Tagalog, which isn't a blanket language, but it applies to a great deal of them, and she assists them with any questions. The other thing is that in terms of payment, they fall under a collective agreement. So they can be in Manila and look up that collective agreement online and know what they're entitled to. On the job many of our guys came in for was a Petro-Canada project. So they, like Canadians from outside the Edmonton area, were housed at the Ramada. So at first we were talking about, well, how do you, what's the best way to work with them to make sure they know what's going on. And these folks are involved in their church. It was within a week they were going down for coffee to the Royal Alec Hospital, talking to other Filipinos. There were Filipinos working at the Ramada, so it really wasn't that tough. A couple other things I should say, because quite often government programs don't get good play. I mean, Service Canada has been wonderful to deal with, has been my experience. And the Red Seal, and again, there's about 100 people in this room who know a lot more about trades than me. In some trades, if these folks get what they call a Red Seal, they're then approached actively by the government. They get a letter to immigrate and stay here. And in a perfect world, the people that want to stay should get to stay. I've been surprised by how many people didn't want to stay. They want to come and work and go home. I didn't think that would be the experience, but that I have seen that with people. With Americans, also huge cultural issues. I've almost had more with the Americans than Filipinos, in that they'll phone and say, okay, the dollar's changed, we'd like you to pay us in American now. And there's a lot of American stories, but nonetheless, I think one of the things that people should note at this conference is, hear more and more about temporary foreign workers, I think certainly in the industrial construction sector, where I get paid, at the present time, it's going to change. And we see the need to bring, there may not be the need to bring people from outside of Alberta as much. So, there's huge changes going on, and I think we need to be, to take advantage to look at those. Some of the other programs that I think for diversity, I think I've been pleasantly surprised with the lack of racism, because there's always an experience. I could tell you 100 horror stories from my career on racist incidents and everything, but just these people come, they're treated well. I can think of when we did a dinner when they were heading back to the Philippines, one of the unions gathered all their resumes, because there's still a shortage in this particular trade, and made them available to other employers. And these people many of them had never had email addresses before. And what they did, they knew they were heading back to the Philippines, so they got letters of employment from us, and they had their resumes, and they actively looked for work in Canada, so maybe they'll be back. And I always think, for those that want to, it's good. Some of the wages, and the wages under a unionized collective agreement are the wages, but many of these people spoke 3 languages. They've got experience of working 10 years overseas. They're skilled. They're really good people. And some of them would have worked in the Middle East and had some horrific experiences and human rights abuses that they certainly weren't experiencing here. They're aware there's a hotline to help them. They're aware who their union steward is. And I could think of people who would be going to overseas. They'd be looking at a 48-hour work week. The one fellow who emails me all the time, it's $1.83 an hour for the first 48 hours, and then it moves to a time and a quarter. and you're 8 to a room. So when they come over here and they're in the Ramada, one last story, and it's a good story. When they were first coming in, we would meet them at the airport. Eventually, the other Filipino workers would come to meet them at the airport, right? Because then they're old friends. They've worked in Russia together or wherever else they've been. But one of the main concerns I had is they didn't want to stay in their own rooms. And in construction, the deal is, and again, I guess, project labor agreement, just to learn those, Bob. That's a half-hour session for people like me. But anyways, these guys are entitled to their own room. And women, we're bringing in women welders someday, I hope, from the Philippines too. So anyways, they're entitled to their own room, and I think that was a new experience for them. And they said, well, we like 2 to a room. What if we have a heart attack or something? And I guess, and I said, well, it's 1 to a room. That's the thing. And they said, well, who checks? And I said, well, we don't check. And they said, we just, and there's a cultural name for nightmares that they use, but they say, we prefer 2 to a room. So I knew at the Ramada, for at least half these guys, they were staying 2 to a room, and 2 beds, nothing interesting or anything, but 2 to a room, and we had half those rooms sitting empty, which is a horrific waste. But at the same time, darn well, if you ever had a separate standard and you started down that slippery slope of even appearing to say Canadians 1 to a room, these people 2 to a room. So that was a cultural learning for me. And then I understand towards the end, one of the guys who's emailed me, they found out that if they weren't staying in the hotel, they could claim $100 tax-free. So I believe some of these guys no longer appeared on the roster of the hotel, but they were making some extra money. So they were very happy. So yeah, that's it. My biggest pleasant surprise has again been if you merge people in, if they come in and you don't have special programs, they go through the same union stewards, the same company processes, it works well. I think what I fear happening, and I wouldn't want to be part of it, is, and I've been to projects in Iceland, and I've been to other projects. I think I really fear what some companies may look at doing, which is race-based crews, which you'll come in and you'll speak, you might speak one language and work in one specific area. And I believe, and I've heard the for and against it, and that may work. I just believe that unless people are working together, you're promoting their differences. These guys all worked in mixed crews and got along great, be they Americans from anywhere else. So I think it's important when these big projects proceed, and they're certainly not, some of them aren't proceeding this week, but when they proceed, there's real thought given to what's right for those people. And because I think, if you're just looking at getting the job done and you can sector it off and say, we're going to have this nationality here, this nationality here, this nationality here, those people will not get along. I just think, when you go back to the bunkhouse at night and you're not interacting, I just think you lead to problems. I think when you do it how I've seen, and I'm not on the job site, but how I've heard it's done with mixed crews, people work well, and I think people deserve a lot of credit for that. I think the face of Alberta is changing, and I think you're either going to be a part of that change and supporting it, or else you're going to have more problems. And I could say more about some of the other things like apprenticeship, but my specific role is to bring in tradespeople, and that's for the LMOs, which is labor market opinions. You're not allowed to bring in apprentices, and I support that. You shouldn't be. We should be trying to train Canadians for those jobs, but if there's a severe shortage, and that's acknowledged as part of the process, in my job, you have to deal through unions, fortunately, then it can work. So, and the wage rates, it's important because somebody asked me last night, how much less do foreign workers get paid? If they're under a collective agreement, they have to be paid the same. So that's why it's probably the best way for somebody to come into the country. Anyways, I probably ate my 10 minutes, so thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Wow, what a fantastic way to start our day. Thank you to each of you for your time to prepare and for sharing your thoughts today. We really appreciate that. What we'd like to do now is open the floor to questions.
Hi, my name is Bob Blakely. I'm the Canadian Director of the Building Trades. I was formerly the president of the Alberta Building Trades, and through that time I had a pretty good chance to deal with Dougie Golosky and his companies. I want to tell you, Dougie, I enjoyed your presentation. You're too modest by a half. The people you've started in the trades, always doing the right thing. You started off with the helmet and the stinger, and now you're running one of the biggest contracting firms in the country, and you're doing the right stuff. Keep it up, buddy. We need more people like you in this province.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack Benshoff. I'm with the Ironworkers local in Edmonton. I have a question for Mr. McClelland. I wonder if he could address the point of whether it's better to have temporary foreign workers or to try to get them to actually become, you alluded to it a little bit in your talks, whether to have them become actual landed immigrants and eventually Canadian citizens through immigration.
Yeah, and a successful area I point to is the program for caregivers that Canada has when you come in and you work for 3 years, then you're eligible through a process to apply to stay. So I think in a perfect world, that's the way to go. For let's say iron workers, of which I saw a very unique group in Detroit last week. I think a lot of the ones in North America, they don't want to stay. They want to come up and work like a shutdown and go home. But I think anybody who comes, and if there's a need for them to work, they should have the opportunity to look at ways to stay. So I have a strong bias that that people should have the right to look at staying, and so I think that should always be an option available to people. And I think some of the programs that are in place now, the government should be commended for them. Like these guys who got their red seal, when they get a letter from the government saying, please fill out these forms, we want you to stay, it's a pretty great moment in their lives. So I always think you should have the right to stay, or at least apply to stay, and if you meet the qualifications, we need you. I also think, if I can use this, because a fellow named Buzz Hargrove barked at me for years on this, is in places like Ontario where the economy's changing, and my hometown of Hamilton, they're putting people out of work like crazy, and some of these people are industrial workers and industrial electricians. We need to look at ways to see if they can be construction electricians and find work. So there are people in Canada too that I think presently we need to do better at recruiting here, and that's where you got to get into government policy and initiatives. But yeah, I think we need to. I think there is all kinds of things we need to be looking at a policy level with the government, and I'm hoping I rely on their government for their continued high-level policy that will address the shortages. There's all kinds of things. There's people in this room in 10 minutes could come up with policies to address the shortages right in Canada, but there's not enough of that going on as well, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. We often hear on the job site the comment that these people are in Canada and they send their money home. That I was wondering, like in terms of the Canadian economy, if it wouldn't be, certainly there's a need for them at times, and if it wouldn't be better for Canada as a nation to have these people actually immigrate. Canada was built by immigrants, let's face it. So.
Well, many of our horse thief ancestors were kicked out of Ireland, so in my case, so yeah, I know. I mean, and the other thing I always point out to people is many of us don't have the points to apply to immigrate if we weren't born here. So I'm very fortunate to have been born here, but I'm dealing with people who come in and they speak 3 languages and are very, they speak Spanish, they speak other languages, they spend 10 years traveling the world. I think it's a shame to send them home. So yeah, I agree
very much. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Mattis. I'm with the Natural Gas Employees Association. It's a bargaining labor unit for the employees at ATCO Gas. It occurred to me that each of the panelists have touched on something that I think we as human beings all look for, and that's to find a sense of community. When the panelists were all discussing that, I noticed that the first 2 gentlemen, Doug and Blair, you talked about the community that you built and the family and the sense of belonging to the organization. I think, Dan, you're starting to touch on those things. and you pointed out some obvious differences between the type of occupation or operation that requires the transient type worker in the construction trade versus a business which is actually trying to build an integrated workforce for the long term. Just consider, as you were building these companies, and I'll lay it out to all the members of the panel, and maybe you can crystallize the idea. What was the key point that you found to help build that sense of community amongst your workers?
Could you repeat just that last part?
Yeah, what was the key point that helped build that sense of community amongst your workers?
Well, I'm going to say that that's not an easy question, because I think it was a addition of many little things. The main thing that we have found is that all people feel part of something when they're given equal opportunity, when they're recognized as part of a solution the same as anybody else. Fair treatment, focusing on their, well, as we do, on their abilities. There's an instant trust, an instant feeling of belonging, and that's the old way of looking at community. Community is a group of individuals that are comfortable and work together as a team, and that's what we have been able to instill by fair treatment, by equal opportunity, by all of those platitudes that you hear but are so true, and that's what for us have added together into the mix. We baked a cake. A lot of what I say comes out as recipes.
I can't understand why.
I'm not sure how that happens, but it does.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. You use the analogy of a recipe. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but it's something that you've taken and found great success, probably through experimentation. Thank you for that answer.
Absolutely. Thanks for your comment.
Thanks. Just to add to that, one thing I noticed that I heard an undertone in that all these discussions, it was about morale, and I'm reminded of that quote, misquote by my case, of Napoleon, where morale is to skill is as 3 to 1. In all the cases that we've talked about, morale has overcome any issues with the skills and or shortcomings that may have been in the process. Thank you for answering that, Blair.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Salim Sindhu. I'm from Calgary Immigrant Educational Society. This is the first time I have attended this meeting, and I congratulate the people who organized that. It's wonderful to get all together, the employers, the employees, and different people. What I have been 2 days listening from our different speakers, I was wondering, with your individual experience as an employer with the foreign workers or the immigrants is commendable. But do you have any anecdote to tell the experience of an immigrant in the diversity over here, how they feel? That is something I didn't see in this conference. So I was wondering if you have some personal experience, one of your employees or your colleague who is a landed immigrant or who is a foreign worker has shared something about Canada and settling in over this country and getting into this society. Thank you, sir.
I can relate to some in our organization. We have truck drivers who have applied now to come from the Philippines, and we've worked with them to help them do the paperwork, get their housing, try to bring them in as part of the crew, and just assist them in different ways. And the good part is that a lot of their co-workers, the Canadian people that were born here, got involved with it. In my shop in McMurray, I have a little fellow that runs our burning table. It's all computerized, and he does CAD drawings and that. Well, one of the other workers is a guy from Croatia. And it's really amazing the two of them get along so well that the Croatian guy takes them out for beers on Friday nights, and the little guy's not used to that. But they really helped, and he's teaching the Croatian a little bit of stuff, and they've learned to work together. If you, I think, as owners of companies for our company, I expect our key people to be involved with these guys, to give them a hand. I hope that's some answers to what you're talking about.
Thanks, sir.
I guess if I could add, I know I emphasized the training part again, and I think one of the employers, one of the requirements should be training, and I believe some of that, if people are coming to Canada, should be done overseas. And the reason is when they get here and they're working 6-10s, and we tell them, you know, if you have to get this Red Seal training, we can't. It's ridiculous to expect people working 60 hours a week to go to school 3 hours a day. It's unsafe and it's dangerous. And at the same time, try and tell somebody who sees the clock as ticking that, by the way, we want you to go to a course on Friday, so you won't be making your time and a half, and on Saturday you won't be making your double time. You know, people are here to work and make money, but we have to do a better job at training. And I just see that in talking to Filipinos who aren't working for me, that's one of the failures. We bring people over, and this is in some trades. You know, you bring them over, you use them for 6 months, you have them write a test, they fail, and they're done. You know, as an obligation, you should be trying to make sure they're skilled and they've got the training they need to come back easier in the future. So that's one of the things I think, and when I was in the Philippines, they're extremely upset that we're taking so many of their skilled workers and not helping them with their training needs in the future. So there's a really, you know, if all of a sudden you're there and the Calgary Health Region, I'll use them because they don't exist anymore, takes 200 nurses from one of the main hospitals, I mean, you're angry. And so we need to do a better job training, and we need to make sure that we're doing things to take care of those countries as well. And that, again, that delves into government policies. I'll stop.
I might like to add a question if there's nobody else. In thinking about all types of diversity in the workplace, what, if anything, have you done to prepare your existing employees for, you know, an inclusive and respectful workplace?
Well, in our case, it was accidental, but we now know how essential it was, and that was when we started. We had only 2 employees with disabilities, and we were able to, I'll say, introduce them to the rest of the workforce. I mentioned earlier that, to me, the biggest obstacle in dealing with bringing staff with disabilities into the workplace is fear. People, as in general, do not understand the disability or how it appears or how it affects them or how to deal with it. And so in our case, when we brought the deaf individual and the young autistic man into work, it didn't take long for people to realize that their differences were very, very small. And so it was bringing them into the organization and letting people work with them, see their values, and get over that fear. What happened to us then is we had a totally prepared workforce staff that were not only aware of how to work and spend time with people with disabilities, but they looked forward to it. And so it was a welcoming atmosphere, and continues to be a welcoming atmosphere that we bring people into. And I'm a strong, strong proponent of learning to walk before you run. And that is so important. Worked well for us. We took it step by step, learned the pros, the cons, and we're making some fairly good strides today.
Well, again, we hire through the union halls, and I guess, my experience is that the people on the work site know that we have to advertise, take Canadians first. I think where improvements need to be done, from my experience, is that we need to do a better job working with our own supervision, more so at a senior level on what's going on, because I think it's quite a change for people who haven't experienced it before. Particularly, if no different than any other work site, if the word's out, well, these guys aren't good welders like our welders. I think some of the information that's helped me is once I learned that X-rays they actually weld X-rays, that the work's being checked on and they're working at that level. But my experience is that, like I say, the unions who represent those members, including the foreign workers, their membership is in the loop, and that's been done at their level. And we've talked at Petro-Canada, we had a meeting with the union stewards, and they were all very positive as well. So, I credit those people, because it doesn't matter what policies you have at a corporate level unless they're supported at the work site. And credit to the people at the work site for helping these people work.
In our case, for my own belief, and I've done this for quite a few years now, I believe that everybody has good in them. They all can be trained. I'm a firm believer that I can take anybody off the street. I don't care what walk of life, where they're from, as long as they have two qualities. One is being prepared to come to work every day, and the second one is willingness to learn. The rest we can do. We can spend time. I've had guys work for me that were slow learners, and in our apprenticeship, the natural thing is our journeyman, the other guys would say, get rid of him. He's slower than the rest, but he was trying so hard to be perfect, and he couldn't keep up with the guys. Anyway, as an owner, sometime you have to intervene and override your management team. So, needless, we kept after this. I kept him on. Now he works at one of the major plants, married, journeyman welder, very good, but he has a disability. We have to change a culture of all of the people we work with. And this is industry, employers, the government, because we've trained a lot of people we've taken them from high school. And a lot of the programs that started in Alberta have come out of Fort McMurray. And I'm very proud of this. And I've been involved with a lot of it. And we had very good leaders in the past, like Eric Newell, Jim Carter, Stincrude, where we started programs like the co-op, work experience from high schools. The RAP program, came from us. Because 15 years ago, we knew we were going to have problems with trades, education, right? And I think it's a continuing thing. We just have to keep pushing and thinking outside the box, what we're trying to do. Careers, the next generation. I said to them, we just had a meeting the other night, and I said, we have to get the people that have went through stuff. When you have, we're trying to talk people into going to become an engineer or whatever. We got to take the people that went through it and make them go and be the spokesman for us. People don't want to hear guys like me talk. What am I going to talk about? They want some young person or they can relate to them. Same with the foreign workers. You get one that is in our situation. One of them always seems to be the leader of that crew. I don't know if you noticed that. In our welding shop, he's a 488 member. He's called Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is the boss of all these guys, right? When they have problems, Mr. Lee comes to me and deals with it. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Would you all join me in thanking Blair, Doug, and Dan for their time this morning?